Hello YouTube, Kaitlyn here, and we're going to talk about abusive boyfriends today. Ah, why are you saying that so cheerfully? So I've never been hit by a boyfriend before, but that doesn't mean I haven't experienced abuse within a relationship. There's a lot more to abusive relationships than just physically hitting someone. Sometimes the deeper and longer lasting scars are ones that are emotional. It took me a long time to realize that the relationship that I had in high school was actually an abusive one. Now, a lot of it stems from immaturity because we were both 16 and 17 years old. And as far as I can tell, he's not the same emotionally abusive person in the relationship that he's in now. Props for growing up. But I thought it would be useful to share some of my experiences with an emotionally abusive relationship, so in case you are experiencing some of the same things and don't realize that anything's wrong. Because at the time I thought that it was all my fault and I deserved the abuse that I was getting. In fact, I didn't think of it as my abuse, I just thought of it as my punishment. He would tend to string me along with things. He wouldn't tell me about parties that he wanted me to go to with him that were for his friends until the last second, and he knew that it was difficult for me to get to go to a party in the first place because my parents were very strict. So at the last minute he would call me and tell me, oh, I've forgotten about this thing, but can you go? So then I would go through an extreme amount of stress trying to get permission from my parents to go to this party with him, and usually it wouldn't work out, and then he would be very upset. But he wouldn't be upset with me per se, he would be upset with himself. He would be upset that he had forgotten to ask me early enough, and so he would degrade himself and say that he's such a forgetful person, and he's such a jerk, and such, an idiot, that kind of stuff. And so technically when I had the right to be mad that he had put me through all of this stress, instead I was having to console him and tell him, no, it's okay, it's my fault, my parents are just jerks and they won't let me go places. Sister. He definitely suffered from self-esteem problems when we were together, and so he would use me as a way to bolster his self-esteem by messing something up and then having me come after him and go, no, honey, it's fine, I forgive you. Basically, he was creating problems so that I could forgive him for it because that forgiveness made him feel better about himself. He would do concerning things like taking a letter opener and carving a cross into his forearm. Now, he wasn't necessarily cutting, but I knew that this wasn't good and this was a step towards that, and I'm like, what do? I have to protect you, but he would beg me not to tell his parents. He would also talk a lot about how he was going to hell. He was convinced that he could never be forgiven for just being himself. Apparently, he just thought that his thoughts were so horrible that God hated him, and so he was punishing him every day. Us both being Christians, this was very tough for me because I just didn't know how else to say that he was forgiven. And even if he didn't believe in a God, he still just wasn't that horrible of a person that he thought he was. So these are all just weird and bad things that were happening that you don't want to happen in your relationship. But it wasn't until I went to college and he was still a senior in high school that things got very complicated. We didn't break up even though I was going to a school 3 hours away and I didn't have a car, so we couldn't regularly meet up. And there I met a guy who became a good friend, and later I developed a crush on him and he developed a crush on me, and we ended up kissing. So yes, I technically cheated on my high school boyfriend, and I feel bad for that. I feel bad that I didn't tell him earlier that I just wasn't feeling the same way in the relationship anymore. But his reaction to me kissing a guy, and that's all I did, kiss him, was way out of proportion. He called me a monster, he called me manipulative, he called me a bitch, he called me a slut. He would call me up in the middle of the night when I had a class at 8 a.m. the next night just to yell at me and cry on the phone and be so upset at me. But he wouldn't just break up with me. He convinced me that it was my punishment, that I needed to stay with him and prove my love to him over and over and over again. How I was supposed to prove that love to him, I don't know, unless it was taking his phone calls at midnight or letting him call me horrible names. And I thought that's what I deserved. But it's not. There's nothing that you could ever do that could justify someone that you love, your boyfriend or girlfriend, to say horrible things to you or to physically hurt you. So I want you to know that whether you were a guy or a girl dating a guy or a girl, you should never, ever think that it's okay to allow them to abuse you physically or emotionally. And you might not even realize that they're being abusive, but if it hurts you to be in a relationship with them, you shouldn't be in a relationship with them. Now, don't get me wrong, relationships are hard and you have to work at them, and sometimes it can hurt just to be in one, but it shouldn't hurt constantly. And that is what being in an abusive relationship is like. Now, I've forgiven this guy and we've talked it out together and we've both moved on, which is good. But sometimes things make me remember and those old hurts flare up, which is why I don't want any of you guys to have to go through the same struggle that I went through alone without realizing what kind of damage it's doing to you. Hopefully none of you guys are having to deal with anything even remotely like this, and I hope and pray that so much. But if you are, I want you to listen to these words that I'm saying and see someone from experience and to think, oh, maybe I should look into this and go talk to someone and see if what I'm dealing with really is an abusive relationship. don't stay. It's not worth it in the long run. Unless you count being able to make a video about it telling other kids not to do it. So I want to open up the comments to people's stories and experiences with abusive relationships or fears about abusive relationships, anything that you might be thinking or worrying about. Let's have a discussion down there. And remember to like, favorite, share, and subscribe if this video made you smile or you're going to seriously think about some stuff. Yeah. I love you guys. See you next Thursday. Dancing with the bunny time, dancing with the bunny time. Oop, 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 oop. I'm holding